The morning sun rose sluggishly over the Martian horizon, casting its cold, reddish light across the desolate landscape. Gabriel Stokes stood on the weathered balcony of his modest outpost, staring out at the endless expanse of rock and dust. The air was thin, the quiet absolute. This was his sanctuary, a place where the ghosts of his past rarely dared to tread. His hydroponic garden thrived in the controlled environment below, rows of green breaking the monotony of his days. Life here was simple, predictable, a far cry from the chaos he'd once commanded. Gabriel sipped his coffee, the cup warm against his scarred hands. He was grateful for the peace, even if it came at the cost of isolation. The silence was shattered by the sharp crackle of an old communication terminal in the corner. Gabriel frowned, setting his mug down. The terminal hadn't been used in years, its antenna barely operational. He strode over, his boots echoing on the metal floor, and pressed a button. "Unidentified broadcast detected," announced the system, the synthetic voice hollow and emotionless. The screen flickered to life, and a hologram filled the room. A towering alien figure appeared, its 6 eyes gleaming with malice. Gabriel recognized the insignia of the Zauran Dominion instantly. The voice of Admiral Therax boomed, reverberating with scorn. "People of Earth and its forgotten colonies," Therax began, his claws tapping rhythmically against the control panel. "Your time in the galaxy has ended. Humanity is a relic, a species clinging to myths and broken technologies. We will cleanse this backwater world and its scattered remnants. And as for your so-called Baba Yaga..." Gabriel's jaw tightened at the mention of the name. "He is nothing more than a bedtime story to frighten your children. My fleet approaches Mars as I speak. Your extinction will be swift." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Gabriel leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. He tapped a finger against his thigh, his mind already piecing together the implications. For years he had hoped to fade into obscurity, a forgotten man on a forgotten planet. But the galaxy, it seemed, had other plans. He stood and moved to a locked hatch embedded in the floor. A sequence of key codes and biometric scans later, the hatch hissed open, revealing a dimly lit vault. Inside lay the remnants of his former life, weapons, armor, and tactical systems from humanity's golden age. Gabriel pulled out a dusty helmet, its once pristine visor now scratched and dull. As he stared at his reflection, memories surfaced unbidden, battles fought on distant worlds, comrades lost, and the weight of the title he never wanted, Baba Yaga, the specter of war. A beeping sound interrupted his thoughts. The terminal was active again, this time displaying a live feed of the Martian sky. A formation of Zauran ships pierced the atmosphere, their dark hulls gleaming like predatory beasts. Gabriel muttered to himself. "They don't waste time, do they?" The first explosions rocked the outpost. Dust fell from the ceiling as Gabriel braced himself against the wall. He grabbed a communicator from the vault and tuned into Mars's emergency frequency. Static greeted him, followed by a frantic voice. "This is Outpost Data. We're under attack, Zauran forces, requesting immediate assistance." The signal cut out. Gabriel slammed the device onto the table. Mars's defenses were ancient, barely functional after decades of neglect. The colonies had grown complacent, trusting that the Dominion's ambitions wouldn't reach their isolated corner of the galaxy. But they were wrong. Gabriel activated the outpost's holographic map, a detailed layout of Martian settlements and defense installations. Red markers blinked across the display, each one representing a Dominion attack. Most were concentrated near major colonies, but a few smaller groups were advancing toward his location. "Time to see if I've still got it," he muttered. He suited up, the armor fitting like an old glove. The exoskeleton hummed to life, its servos whirring as they adjusted to his movements. He strapped a pulse rifle to his back and holstered a sidearm, his actions precise and methodical. As he stepped outside, the Martian air bit at his exposed skin. He scanned the horizon through his helmet's visor. In the distance, he spotted a squad of Zauran ground forces, their tall, insect-like forms moving with practiced efficiency. Gabriel crouched behind a rock, calculating his next move. A lone figure against an invading army wasn't an ideal scenario, but then again, he'd faced worse odds before. He raised the communicator to his mouth. "This is Gabriel Stokes, broadcasting to any surviving outposts. Do not engage directly. I repeat, do not engage. Fall back to defensible positions and await further instructions." No response. Either no one was listening, or no one was alive to hear him. The Zelran squad drew closer, their weapons gleaming in the sunlight. Gabriel steadied his breathing, his rifle trained on the lead soldier. With a practiced hand, he fired a single shot. The alien collapsed, its comrades scattering in confusion. Gabriel seized the moment, moving with precision and speed. He ducked and weaved through the rocky terrain, picking off the soldiers one by one. The encounter was over in minutes, the last Zelran falling with a guttural screech. Standing amidst the carnage, Gabriel surveyed his handiwork. He didn't take pride in the violence, but he recognized its necessity. The Dominion wouldn't stop until Mars was ashes, and if humanity had any hope of survival, someone needed to remind the galaxy why the Baba Yaga was feared. He activated his communicator again, this time broadcasting on a secure frequency. "This is General Gabriel Stokes," he said, his voice steady and commanding. "To any remaining Martian forces, regroup at coordinates 19.3 north, 78.1 east. We're not done yet." He cut the transmission and glanced up at the sky, where the Zelran ships loomed like a storm. The coffee on his table had long gone cold, but he didn't notice. His focus was elsewhere, his mind already planning the next move. "They think I'm just a story," he muttered. A grim smile played at his lips. "Let's give them something to believe in." And with that, he disappeared into the Martian wilderness, a phantom on a battlefield, ready to remind the galaxy that some legends never die. The Zelran fleet hung ominously in the Martian sky, a vast constellation of warships casting shadows over the desolate surface. Admiral Therax watched from his command deck, his 6 eyes scanning a holographic map of the planet. His claws tapped a rhythm on the armrest of his chair as he issued commands. "Deploy the first wave. Sweep the surface clean," he growled, his voice dripping with disdain. "These humans are ants before the might of the Dominion." Below, Gabriel Stokes crouched in the shadows of a rocky outcrop, his armor blending seamlessly with the Martian terrain. Through the scope of his rifle, he tracked a squad of Zelran drones patrolling the remains of Outpost Theta. Their movements were precise, mechanical, devoid of the caution living soldiers might show. Gabriel smirked grimly. Machines were predictable, his favorite kind of enemy. With the press of a button, he triggered a trap he'd rigged earlier. An old Martian mining charge, buried beneath the surface, erupted in a cloud of red dust and flame. The drones toppled like dominoes, their circuits frying as shrapnel tore through their hulls. "Still works," he muttered to himself, his voice muffled by the helmet. A familiar voice crackled through his comms. "General Stokes, this is Commander Elena Harth. We received your signal and are en route to your coordinates. Estimated arrival in 5 minutes. "Elena," Gabriel replied, a flicker of relief breaking through his usual stoicism. "Glad you're still kicking. Bring friends?" "A handful," she responded, her tone tinged with humor. "Not enough to throw a parade, but we're armed and ready." "Good. We're going to need every gun we've got." The next wave of Dominion forces descended, their ships kicking up plumes of dust as they landed. This time, it wasn't just drones. Zelran soldiers poured out of the crafts, their insected forms bristling with weapons. Gabriel scanned their formation, noting weak points and opportunities. He tapped into the planetary defense grid, such as it was, and activated a nearby turret. The old machinery groaned to life, spewing bullets into the advancing horde. "Let's see how you handle that," he muttered, moving swiftly to a new vantage point. Minutes later, a sleek dropship touched down behind him, its engines roaring before cutting off. The ramp lowered, and Commander Elena Harth emerged, her crimson armor gleaming under the Martian sun. Behind her, a squad of mercenaries disembarked, their expressions a mix of determination and wariness. Always the dramatic entrance, Gabriel said, meeting her halfway. You taught me well, she replied, flashing a grin before turning serious. What's the situation? Dominion forces are probing our defenses. They've got numbers, but we've got the terrain. If we keep them guessing, we can bleed them dry. And if we don't? Gabriel's expression hardened. Then Mars becomes a memory. Elena nodded, her jaw tightening. What's the plan? Gabriel gestured to the holographic map projected from his wrist. They're focusing on the colonies, but their supply lines are thin. We hit their forward base here. He pointed to a marked location. And disrupt their reinforcements. Then, we draw their fleet into the upper atmosphere. If Vanguard can hack their systems, we turn their own weapons against them. As if summoned by name, Vanguard's voice broke through the comms. Your confidence in me is noted, General. I'll do my best not to disappoint. Elena raised an eyebrow. Still working with that rogue AI? I thought you hated relying on machines. Vanguard's not a machine, Gabriel replied. He's a weapon, and a damn good one. A distant explosion shook the ground, cutting the conversation short. Gabriel's helmet flashed with alerts. The Dominion was advancing faster than anticipated. Move out! Gabriel barked, his voice slicing through the chaos. The team split into two groups. Gabriel led Elena and half the squad toward the forward base, while Vanguard and the others provided remote support. As they navigated the rocky terrain, the sounds of battle grew louder, rifle fire, the shriek of alien weapons, and the occasional rumble of collapsing structures. They reached the outskirts of the Dominion's base, a sprawling network of prefabricated structures guarded by drones and soldiers. Gabriel studied the layout, his mind racing. 2-man teams, he ordered. Disable their comms and disrupt their supply caches. Avoid direct confrontation unless necessary. We hit hard, fast, and vanish before they know what hit them. Elena grinned. Just like old times. Let's hope we're not as rusty as we feel, Gabriel replied. The team moved with precision. Elena and her partner planted charges along the base's power conduits, while Gabriel and another mercenary infiltrated the command center. Inside, Zelran officers barked orders, oblivious to their presence. Gabriel signaled his partner to cover the entrance while he hacked into the central console. Vanguard guided him through the process, his voice calm and methodical. You've got 30 seconds before their systems flag the breach, Vanguard warned. Plenty of time, Gabriel muttered, his fingers dancing across the controls. He downloaded critical intel and uploaded a virus that would wreak havoc on the Dominion's network. As alarms began to blare, Gabriel detonated a charge, plunging the room into chaos. Move! He shouted, sprinting toward the exit. Outside, the charges Elena planted detonated in rapid succession, reducing the base to a smoking ruin. The team regrouped on a ridge overlooking the devastation. That should slow them down, Elena said, catching her breath. For now, Gabriel replied. But Therax won't let this slide. He'll double down. As if on cue, a Zelran fighter screamed overhead, firing indiscriminately at their position. The team scattered, diving for cover as explosions peppered the ground. Gabriel grabbed his comms. Vanguard, where's our evac? En route, the AI replied. But you've got incoming, 3 squads, heavily armed. Gabriel cursed under his breath. Elena, get the team to safety. I'll hold them off. Not a chance, she shot back. Don't argue. That's an order. She hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Stay alive, old man. Gabriel watched them retreat before turning to face the advancing forces. He adjusted his grip on his rifle, his heart steady despite the odds. As the first wave of Zelran soldiers crested the ridge, Gabriel smiled grimly. Come on, then, he muttered, raising his weapon. Let's see what you've got. The battle began anew, the Martian air filled with the sounds of war. The Martian night was alive with fire. Gabriel Stokes crouched behind a jagged boulder, his armor camouflaging him against the darkness. Above, Dominion ships strafed the ground, their weaponry carving molten scars into the red soil. The Zelran forces were relentless, but Gabriel had survived worse. He reloaded his rifle, his movements precise and deliberate, and scanned the ridge. The enemy was closing in fast. Their forms, insected and monstrous, moved with an eerie synchronization. Gabriel's HUD lit up with warnings: 3 squads, flanking maneuvers, heavy artillery. He exhaled slowly, steadying his nerves. Vanguard, he whispered into his comms, his voice barely audible over the distant thunder of explosions. Status on that fleet hack? Working on it, General, the AI replied, its tone calm but urgent. The Dominion's encryption is more advanced than anticipated. I need 5 more minutes. We don't have 5 minutes, Gabriel muttered. He adjusted his position, his eyes narrowing as he spotted the lead squad. A burst of plasma fire seared the air above him. Gabriel rolled to the side, coming up in a kneeling position and firing a precise shot. The lead Zelran soldier crumpled, its armor pierced by the plasma round. The rest of the squad hesitated, momentarily disoriented. Time to move, he murmured. Gabriel darted toward a cluster of boulders, his movements fluid and efficient. The Zelrans regrouped quickly, their weapons blazing as they pursued. He fired sporadically, each shot designed to keep them off balance rather than eliminate them outright. Behind him, the sound of engines roared. A sleek dropship swooped low, its floodlights cutting through the darkness. Gabriel's comm crackled to life. General, this is Elena, came the familiar voice. We've got your extraction. Get to the marker. Gabriel glanced at the HUD overlay in his visor. The evac point was 200 meters away, an open expanse with no cover. Perfect, he muttered sarcastically. He sprinted, zigzagging to avoid the plasma bolts that lit up the night like angry fireflies. His armor absorbed a glancing hit, the impact staggering but not stopping him. As he neared the extraction point, a Zelran fighter screamed overhead, dropping a payload of explosives. The ground erupted in a shower of dirt and fire, throwing Gabriel off his feet. He hit the ground hard, his vision swimming. Elena! He barked into the comms. I need air support now! Hold on, we're coming in hot! She replied. The dropship descended, its side guns blazing. The Zelran squad scattered under the withering fire, buying Gabriel precious seconds to recover. He pushed himself up, his body protesting every movement, and staggered toward the ship. The ramp lowered, and Elena appeared, her rifle trained on the enemy. Move it, old man! Gabriel leaped onto the ramp, turning midair to fire a final shot at the nearest Zelran soldier. The plasma round struck true, and the alien toppled as the ramp closed behind him. Inside the ship, the team was already regrouping, tending to wounds and reloading weapons. Elena handed Gabriel a canteen, her eyes sharp despite the exhaustion etched into her face. Thought we lost you back there, she said. Not today, Gabriel replied, taking a long drink. The dropship ascended rapidly, weaving through enemy fire. Vanguard's voice chimed in over the comms. General, I breached the Dominion's fleet systems. Preparing to deploy the override command. Do it, Gabriel said, leaning against the bulkhead. The team watched the viewport as the Dominion fleet suddenly faltered. Ships veered off course, weapons systems shut down, and communications dissolved into chaos. Nice work, Vanguard, Gabriel said. Thank you, General. The virus will disable their fleet for approximately 20 minutes. I suggest making the most of it. Gabriel turned to Elena. Get us to the main colony. We need to rally what's left of Mars's defenses. She nodded, barking orders to the pilot. The dropship streaked across the Martian sky, arriving at the colony's command center. The building was battered but still standing, its defenders scrambling to fortify their positions. Gabriel and his team disembarked, their presence immediately commanding attention. A young officer approached, her face pale with exhaustion. General Stokes? I thought you were just a story. Stories don't bleed, Gabriel replied curtly. What's the situation? The Dominion has overrun most of the outer settlements, she said. We've got maybe 2,000 civilians left, But our defenses won't hold much longer. They won't have to, Gabriel said. We're taking the fight to them. The officer blinked in surprise. Sir? Gather every soldier, every weapon, and every piece of machinery that still works, Gabriel ordered. We're hitting their ground command center. If we take it out, the rest of their forces will collapse. The room buzzed with nervous energy as orders were relayed. Within an hour, a ragtag force of soldiers and volunteers assembled. Gabriel stood before them, his presence a steadying force. I won't lie to you, he began, his voice carrying over the crowd. The odds are against us. But we're not fighting for glory or revenge. We're fighting for survival. For our homes, our families, and our future. The Dominion thinks we're weak, that we're scattered. Let's show them what humanity is capable of. A cheer erupted, hesitant at first but growing in strength. Gabriel nodded, turning to Elena. Let's end this. The final assault was swift and brutal. Using the terrain to their advantage, Gabriel's forces overwhelmed the Dominion's ground command. Explosions lit up the Martian night as the alien stronghold crumbled. In the aftermath, Gabriel stood amidst the ruins, his rifle slung over his shoulder. The Dominion's fleet was retreating, their invasion broken. Elena approached, her armor streaked with dirt and blood. We did it, she said, her voice heavy with relief. Gabriel looked up at the stars, his expression unreadable. This was just the beginning. They'll be back. Then we'll be ready, Elena replied. Gabriel nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of hope. The Baba Yaga wasn't just a legend, it was a promise. A promise that humanity would endure, no matter the cost.